Hello. What do you mean? Oh God. Why would you do that to yourself? You only slept 2 hours? Why did you sleep 2 hours? Why didn't you sleep longer? No rest, only stress. I see. I'm sorry. That sucks. Okay. I need to put things on various places. Hello, Gabby. How are you? I guess you don't feel too awful. I feel like you do that a little too often to yourself. So it's gonna be okay until it's not. Ooh, that sounds kind of loud. We're gonna lower that a little bit. But I'm also gonna turn that down. Okay. I feel like that should be okay. It's been a while, like 14 hours yet. It has been quite a lot of time since we last spoke. It's been a hot couple hours. Let's see. I need to post something for everywhere else. So I might just draw something new instead. First time viewer, excited for the stream, welcome! Hello. Did I get sleep? I did. I did get sleep. Okay, so let's just... That didn't fade at all, but okay. I'm still resetting up my overlay and stuff because my computer does not have a lot of my presets still. I'm still working on that. We'll get that together at some point. It's sort of faded. It should fade more gradually, you know? Oh, well, I could do that manually if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I want it to fade slower, so I'm gonna have to fix that. Hey, Mello. Okay, so we're gonna. That's because I did it by hand, though. Bye, Mystical. Sometimes I don't get previews of my brush in Photoshop. Dude, not by hand? This is not by hand. Because this right now. Hello. Jibbo Johnson is a pretty good name. Live twice in 20-ish hours? I know. It's a crazy concept for me. Hello, Sapiens. I will hydrate. Well, I'm almost out of my drink. There's not enough drink left in my cup for me to drink this quietly. But I've hydrated. Hey, Chrissy. Hello, hello. Ordered food at my door instead of cooking for the first time in 3 months. Sometimes you'd just rather not cook. Today is the 5th anniversary of Devil Trigger being released. Oh, 5th anniversary. Has it really been that long since Devil May Cry 5 has been out? I sat down to eat and draw, but I left my pencil on the counter and now I'm trying not to fall asleep. Very fair. Productive creep. I don't. Yeah, I mean, the last stream was definitely not me trying to be productive. I was just being reckless. I also had insomnia, but I'm feeling quite good today. So, you know, there are some days where I'm like, I don't know if I'll be like able to stream, but today I was like, yeah, I'll stream. I'll stream twice in a day, sure. So, definitely a different type of productive today, I guess. Hey Mel. Does it sound different? Oh. Oh, hold on.
Okay. That should be better. That should be better. I didn't notice that my mic wasn't plugged in. Yeah, I have to unplug it manually because for some reason, even when my computer is turned off, my mic still shows up as like the light is still on inside of it, which usually means that it's still getting power and it's on. And I don't exactly know why. So I tend to unplug it, but then I forget to replug it back in because outside of streaming and when I talk to friends, I rarely use my mic. And I forgot. My art style's changed a little bit. I think it's kind of just like I'm in a different headspace right now, and so my art style tends to change a lot when I am looking at, you know, different types of people or in a certain mood or a stage in my life. A lot of my stuff has been a little bit more stylized recently, and I think in the past couple months, it's been a lot more anime inspired, I guess. Mainly because I've had a couple of projects that have been kind of in that vein. So, it has changed a little bit, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't really know if I like it more. I don't know if it's better or worse. It just is. And it'll change again when I am in a different mood. Because that's what it does. I don't remember what outfit I gave her. I gave her an outfit, and I don't remember. All I remember is that it was slightly purple. She had a lot of cloth because that's what I do. And she had shoulders. Oh well. Yes, thank you for catching that, because I definitely would not have noticed. Even though the light's like right in front of my face. firecrackers? Nope. I actually did not even notice that it was Chinese New Year until my family brought it up in like the family group chat, and I'm like, oh, I see. to say. Because I feel like a lot of my development was primarily kind of like more mental versus technical. I definitely did grow on a technical scale, but a lot of the things that I think I took away from it were about my mentality and kind of just more of a maturity thing, because I had a lot of really good teachers there that, you know, when I talked to them, I felt like I learned better ways to frame things that I was struggling with. A lot of the teachers that I had at the time are no longer there, so I can't really speak for what Laguna is now. I don't think I would be where I'm at if I hadn't gone to Laguna, because I think the teachers that I had there and the people that I met there had made such a huge impact on me that I think it's suffice to say I think I did learn a lot from there, but what I learned on a more technical scale, I did a lot of that work post school. I think a lot of it was from applying skills that I was working on at school to assignments that I was getting through work, and that kind of went hand in hand with each other as I was going through college because I was working at the same time. So I don't know, it's hard to quantify. I've definitely seen people who were at Laguna who like made huge improvements with their work and made really great strides. And I also met people that kind of didn't really change over the course of their education. I think it ultimately depends on what classes you take, what kind of teachers you have, what kind of people you meet there, because you know you'll either meet people that really encourage you and inspire you to keep pushing and to push yourself at school, or you know it's really easy to feel like you're kind of just floating from class to class. So regardless of where you go, that's the case. I think Laguna has the benefit of, at least when I went to their, was a game art major there, I learned a lot of kind of game development specific knowledge that I wouldn't have gotten had I just done a normal like illustration program elsewhere. And so I really benefited from being in like a specialized program because it really prepared me for some of the aspects of concept that I probably wouldn't have known. I will say that predominantly a lot of the lessons you're going to learn are going to come from actual working experience versus school, because as much as school tries to mimic an office or a studio, it kind of can't because the stakes are different. But I don't know, I think Laguna is a good school. It's not a terrible choice. I know it is kind of expensive, so weigh that against your other options, I guess. Yes, I was just doing this so I had something to post on various places. So give me a sec. Oops. Nah, you're good. What? we go. Okay, and then hello. I'm gonna share this on Instagram and then we'll be ready to move on. Link to... Cool. Yes, she's a fun one. I designed her for a D&D campaign that ended up never happening, but I still really like her. Hold on, let me check something. It's so weird. Why does it not? Oops. What is this? Oops. Whoa. What is happening? What am I clicking? Oh, what? So weird. A suit jacket, armor. It's interesting. Very strange. Okay. I'm going to find this character. I don't know what this little rectangle is. So what did I draw last stream? I worked on this. Did this. Really late at night. Just basically rendering. That was all. I'll finish it at some point. It just takes a little bit of time. But I've just got her legs to finish, so... It'll happen. It'll happen at some point. I just don't know when. But sooner than later, because as soon as I stop working on it for an extended period of time, I'm not gonna go back. So. It was just for fun. I haven't done like personal art in a really long time, and that was kind of like an attempt to do some more personal work. In the process, try to remember like what I like drawing. I felt like I kind of forgot. Peach had a little bit of a sneezing fit just now. Do you look okay? Hey, small bear. Hey, Ficky. Do I go to coffee shops and draw? Occasionally. I mean, if you were there for the stream, you would have, at the start of it, I kind of went on a brief, like, existential crisis, or explanation of my existential crisis of the past couple, months, just kind of trying to come to terms with, like, some weird stuff I'd been feeling for a little bit, nothing that I haven't talked about in the stream or on the stream before, but, just kind of realizing that I kind of don't have a good grasp. I kind of lost, I guess, a sense of what I wanted, or like what was mine, like I guess what made me and my work different, because I had spent like the last couple months really kind of trying hard to cater to what like my job demanded of me and what my clients wanted to see from me and stuff. So in doing that, it felt like sometimes I don't really know what kind of artist I'm trying to be, and sometimes you can kind of just ignore it. Sometimes it's a little hard to ignore the fact that you are at a total loss for words when you kind of look at your own work and you're like, I don't recognize me in this thing. And I've been watching a lot of, I don't know if anyone else is interested in like stand-up comedy, but I'm watching a lot of Daniel Sloss again. And Daniel Sloss is probably one of my favorite comedians because he always manages to wrap another kind of deeper conversation within his rather crude language, or crude humor, dark humor, as some people would call it. And one of his shows is called Jigsaw, and it's basically surrounding this analogy about how life is a jigsaw, and we're just all trying to put our jigsaws together with elements like, you know, family, friends, job, hobbies or interests, and, you know, like, we all lost the box to our jigsaw, but we're still trying to put the pieces together, right? Excuse me. Spotify would stop for some reason. Daniel Sloss, S-L-O-S-S. So he has a really cool analogy for that. It's meant to be about relationships because his father, who had originally told him about this analogy, had described it in terms of, like, you know, you have in the four corners you have family, friends, hobbies and interest, work, and in the center you have the relationship piece, like the person who makes you happy. And you should watch the show. It's a really good thing, especially if you are struggling with a relationship right now or struggle with relationships in general. I think it's really good in general for that. Excuse me, why do you keep stopping? But I was starting to think about that same analogy. Oh, it's on, two of his shows, Dark and Jigsaw, are on Netflix. And his most recent thing, X, is on HBO Max, I think. But that analogy is based around relationships, supposedly. But I was kind of framing it also around, like, kind of also me in a way. And thinking about it in that context of, like, when you... I don't want to, like, spoil it, because I think the way that he explains it, both in, like, a theatrical sense and in the way that he frames the show is really important to hear from, like, the correct pacing. But in general, you know, sometimes we'll take something desperately because we think we have to, or we think we should, or the fact that it makes us like the correct way to live, or the correct way to go about things, or like you should aspire to be this person or aspire to do something in line with other people's pressure, and you start putting together these pieces that don't really fit in the jigsaw that you'd started creating. So what do? Sometimes you can just be like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to change my jigsaw just to fit someone else's. But a lot of what we tend to do is we'll just like throw things out of our jigsaw. We'll discard a family piece or a friend piece or hobbies. We'll throw out the work piece, like just to try and fit it around this thing that we think should be there. And in a way, I was kind of throwing... Why does it keep stopping? I was throwing away, like, various pieces of, like, my own tastes and preferences, because I thought, like, I should be a better artist, I should be trying to do something more interesting, cooler, I should be more well-rounded, I should be, you know, I should be learning environments and all these things. And it's not to say that I shouldn't be. I think I should always be aspiring to be more than just what I'm comfortable with doing. I think for me, being a specialist is who I am, but I want to be able to rely on myself for more than just that. And that's kind of like a personal thing. So, like, I'd always known that that was something I wanted to make sure that I was keeping in mind, but in pursuit of that, you know, what was I willing to lose? What was I willing to kind of replace? And in kind of the journey to figuring that stuff out, I was also sort of just ignoring what I need to do in order to keep myself going. Sort of like recharging your battery, right? And I wasn't recharging my battery. I was just taking up all of its power. I was slurping it out. I was distributing it. I was just like losing charge, but I was never actually putting or charging it back up, because I wasn't doing things that would allow me to charge back up. And for me, drawing for myself is the way that I kind of rediscover like my own enjoyment and fulfillment. It's not anything big, it's not based on other people, it's just I like drawing my own stuff, basically, because there's no pressure for me to be drawing anything else. And I wasn't doing that a lot, because I was busy. Work had gotten really busy, and so I wasn't taking the time to do that, and I wasn't making time to do it because I figured I'll have time later. But the entire time I was also kind of, you know, losing power and steam, looking at all these other artists that were just so much better than me at all the things I wish I could do. And it was very draining. So then I reached a point, like, you know, now that I've started taking a break from work, that I really didn't want to draw, like, the first couple days that I was off from work, and I was getting into this slump of, like, just kind of feeling really gross about myself and, like, about how I was going about things, and I felt, like, really kind of apathetic to the idea of getting back to work, Not working like at my job, but more so just like getting back to developing my skill set and drawing. I was just kind of apathetic to the idea. And it took a bit, but you know, I decided I was gonna try and draw something for myself. And that's where this drawing came about, was me attempting to kind of just corner all the different things that I actually do enjoy drawing. I like drawing like very decorated characters with a lot of jewels, very kind of Middle Eastern, almost like Northern African styles and designs and stuff like that. And I like drawing fabrics and dynamic rhythms and just trying to corner that all of yesterday. And so, you know, that kind of ended up being the thought, and I think it turned out okay. I would like to think about it a little bit more. You know, it's interesting because we're all kind of in our own little path, I guess, our own little. Last night I described it like a train. Like, we're all in our own little train car on our own little journey, destination somewhere elsewhere. So fundamentally none of these problems that I have are new or crazy or even things that I haven't shared before. And I think, you know, in a way, if you were to ask the me that, like, me at, you know, 5 or 12 or 15, I'd also be very happy with where I'm at now. And I try to think about it like that. But at the same time, part of it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter if if I would have been proud of myself. At least emotionally, it feels like it doesn't really matter in the moment, because it does. It really does. It should make a difference, right? But sometimes when you're in the thick of it, in the thick of feeling a certain way, it sort of just struggles to, it's a struggle to make it feel any less just kind of like depressing, I guess. But I don't know. In a way, like, I've kind of stopped feeling particularly distraught over this kind of stuff. It's more of just like a fact of life. So as soon as I start feeling this way, I'm like, oh, there it is again. Here's you know, darkness, my old friend, kind of a deal. So it's half like I am melancholic about it, half I am terrified by it, and then half I am, or not half, but like I'm partially apathetic to it. The fact that it's happening, the fact that I feel this way. It's weird. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. What does that mean? Hey, Silver Soul. Let's see if this actually helps. I want to take a bet and say that it's not going to help because I am oblivious and also can't really tell left or right, I've discovered. I always used to laugh at like, oh, can't tell left or right, haha, what an idiot. But I realized I don't know left from right. Like, if someone tells me, like, you know, in a game, like, to go this way or that way, I'm like, but like, which way is that though? And then I don't actually go as far as doing the making an L with your index finger and your thumb and looking at which one is actually the L and which one's the backward L. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know, a lot dumber than I thought I was. So I'm having to come to terms with the fact that, like, I don't have an immediate reaction when someone says left or right. My brain still takes like a little bit to catch up, and then not only that, I don't look at notes that I make to myself. So we're gonna see if this LR thing is gonna work and help me not draw things backwards, as I've done before. we're gonna test that. Excuse me. Why does my music stop? Oh, it might be because of the fact that I'm in a call, so let me do that. Cause I was doing a call before, so that my, my little icon would pop up when I was talking, but I don't need to do that anymore. I don't drive. I'm extremely directionally challenged. Like, I don't know where I am most times. I don't know what city I'm in. I don't know what street I'm on. It's not a good time. And like in a game, if I walk somewhere, I like I noticed this particularly when I was playing Persona 5. Persona 5 has a little mini map that can sometimes move with you. You can change it to not move when you rotate the camera or whatnot, but or rotate your character. But I didn't know how to do that for the longest time. And so the mini map would move and rotate, and then I would not know, like, if an enemy dot was coming towards me on the mini map. I didn't know which direction it was because I was lost. It was awful. Minecraft must be a nightmare. It absolutely is. Absolutely is. Like, I cannot drive a boat for the life of me. I'm sitting there looking at, like, north, east, west, and I'm like, okay, if I'm trying to get somewhere, what does X, Y, Z, what do these coordinates mean? Which direction do I have to like, sit down and, like, work through it very slowly. So I'm like, okay, if I want to go this way, or if I want to get to this coordinate, this is a negative number, this is a positive. It's really pathetic. I'm not proud of it. But it doesn't change the fact that it's who I am. It is debilitating. And then sometimes it comes out in moments like this, where I am having to try and remember, like, which direction I flipped the image so that I can unflip it when I go to do the rest of it, and then I don't do that, and then I draw things backwards. Back to the burnout, lost thoughts topic. I really hope you have access to a good therapist. It's been life-changing for me to have someone to talk to and work through things, so I'm better prepared. I have been thinking about it, honestly. I've never gotten a therapist because I always felt like I had a stint where I was in a really bad spot, and I wasn't able to get a therapist, even though at that time I really should have gotten one. And now I'm in a state where I'm like, I kind of have less bad days than I used to. Like, I feel like I've sort of gotten a handle on my depression and my anxiety. But at the same time, I know that that's a common excuse. But regardless, like, therapy for some people can actually really help. And so I am considering it. It's hard to know what makes a good therapist. And also the fact that I generally don't drive, makes it even harder because I will have to just rely on, like, looking for people online, and there's a level of social interaction that kind of is greatly helped by actually feeling or knowing them physically in this, like, real space versus just, like, over a Zoom call. But I've been thinking about it on and off the last couple of years. Like, maybe I really should just, like, get a therapist, because more than just art stuff, like, there's other things too that I still have to work out. that I haven't been prepared to do on my own, so maybe that would be a good thing to look into this year. That's good to know. Yeah, I have a friend who really regularly attends therapy, and it really helps him. And he's like a really big positive voice in it. So I'm definitely interested. Oh, don't worry. I have a lot to go to therapy for. Maybe not art specifically, but there's other stuff that I could definitely go to therapy for. But it would be nice, I think, just to like talk about it with someone, because I've gotten to a stage where I can sort of look at it from a more objective standpoint, as opposed to just like an emotional one. But yeah, I kind of just haven't done the research into it, so I really do need to do that. Good to know. Do I play games in my free time? Sometimes. I've been playing games a lot more often recently. In my burnout from art. But yeah, it's been kind of hard finding games that I really want to play. I 100% Death's Door, which made me sad because I want to go back and replay that game and not remember anything about it. I started Arceus, Pokemon Legends of Arceus. I also picked up Ace Attorney Chronicles, so the one that's like set in the past, which is fun, but like so incredibly long. Like the first chapter, that's like the intro, took me for almost 5 hours. I don't know why it took so long. There's just so much dialogue. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. But this is incredibly long. But it is still pretty fun. Ace Attorney games I'm always very interested in. I still haven't finished one, but I will. I also have some games that I need to finish. Like I started the Nonary games and a while back. I never finished them. I really should. I need to finish Endwalker, Final Fantasy XIV. I need to finish a lot of console games. I started Persona 5 Royale or Royal. And I need to finish Nier. I need to finish Yakuza games. I have a lot of games that I started and never finished. So I'm gonna have to go back to those. I still need to finish Breath of the Wild. I didn't get to Ganon. It's the last thing I have to do, sort of. I mean, I have a lot of quests that I wanted to finish, but it's the last thing I technically have to do, and I've not done it, and going back to it now, I barely remember how to play the game, so I don't think I'm ready to go back and finish it. My Sheldon. Didn't make the same mistake everyone else did. Is it because the boobs are big that I made the torso too long? I'm trying to figure out if this is like an optical illusion or not. It feels too long, but I don't know if it is. I feel like my brain is playing tricks on me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's fine. But maybe it isn't. I don't actually know. She's a very cute character. I'm always happy drawing like really cute characters. There's something about the fact that the only thing you have to worry about is making them cute is incredibly liberating at times, because, you know, when my job is like, you have to balance all these things, like, you know, rhythm and flow and economy of detail and functionality versus, you know, appeal and stuff. It's always nice getting just to draw a character whose only thing is that she's cute. Let's see. The move from before might have made it look okay. Okay. Does she have a tail? She does. Thank God I checked. That's like the checklist before anything gets to go home. It's like, do you have a tail? Do you have ears? Do you have face markings? I also had to check that she had a freckle. So I think about arms in three parts. You have the deltoid. You have the humerus, which has a bunch of muscles up here. And then this shape here is the muscles that wrap around the arm. I believe they're called the brachioradialis. And then you have another cylinder. So I think about it in these parts, right? All the while they are coming towards you in space. So, it's knowing that all the different layers of the arm and then being able to manipulate that so that they're overlapping each other and like their forms are kind of staggering on the arm, so that like you're accounting for muscles, you're accounting for the mass that they add on to the form, you're accounting for like not only the fact that there is muscles in the arm, but also that each muscle has a different height to them. So the arm is pretty flat in some areas, but rather rounded in others, and the angle's different and all that kind of stuff, which can get more and more confusing. But that's kind of what I'm accounting for with a lot of these lines. I'm trying to sort of indicate the muscles that are underlying an arm that doesn't really have a lot of like muscle or mass to it. And I'm taking advantage of the fact that it's moving forward and kind of angled in perspective, so it's foreshortening, to hint at some of the muscles that are under there, under the skin at least. So in this in particular, the muscles that I'm calling out are the deltoid, the brachioradialis, and then underneath, you have the humerus bone, all the muscles overlaying that. Then you have the ulna and the radius, all the muscles overlaying that. There's like a ton of muscles just within the arms. It's a lot to learn. But that's kind of an explanation of like what I was thinking about. With this, I'm trying to think about also that there are certain parts of the arm that are much more rounded, and then some parts of the arm that are much more flat. And I'm trying to account for that change in form, but without actually drawing out the form itself. Okay. I'm glad, because a part of me was like, that was a terrible explanation. So I hope some of that made sense. Hold. I don't know what folder I'm on, so I'm gonna temporarily move you guys back to that screen for a second, and then I'm gonna save this. But we are still working on stuff. I just need to make sure that no incriminating NDA folders are open, because for some reason OBS won't let me save, or won't let me window capture Photoshop without it, like, for some reason glitching out a little bit. I need to figure that out, but until I do, I'm just gonna make sure that everything is hidden hidden away, so I don't get in trouble with anyone. If I save this, I think it should automatically change the folder that it shows to this. Alright, cool. Should be fine. Should be good. We should be fine. Okay. Let's see. Is Esura here? I know she usually lurks. But if she's here. Okay. So when you say different poses, do you care what the poses are? You say 2 separate images of the OC in different poses. Because if you have like preferences, like I can do those, but if you don't, then I'll just make them up. I will drink. Oh, this drink is getting too aggressive for me. It's making too much noise. I'm gonna eat the last of the jelly. So there's a thing called IU jelly, which I didn't know existed. Because I'm so used to like boba, lychee jelly, that kind of stuff. Like grass jelly and stuff. But there's a thing called IU jelly, and I don't even know what it is. I think it's a fruit. But it tastes so good. Oh, it's so good. Okay. Just let me know. It's like AIYU. It's just this kind of like orangish jelly. Orangish, or orange-ish, yellowish jelly. It's very interesting. I don't know what kind of jelly it is, but it's really good. A fig. That's cute. So it's a jelly made from a fig? Are figs fruits? Figs are fruits, right? It tastes really good. If you have the chance to try like a fruit tea with that jelly, it is chef's kiss amazing. You crush the seeds to make the gel. That's cute. I haven't really seen this type of jelly ever before. Only one place by me like has it on its menu, but I'm obsessed. It's very good. Man, I always struggle drawing this crown. I don't know how Fire Emblem does it, but they do. They really do. They make the most difficult designs to redraw. Which, you know what, is rich coming from me. Because I make characters that I explicitly can't redraw either. All of my characters are way too complex, way too much detail. that even I get lazy redrawing them, and I won't even redraw them in the same outfit. Whenever I'm like thinking about like, oh, I want to do a graphic novel or a comic or a manga or a webtoon or something like that, there's a part of my brain that's like, but I'm gonna have to redraw the same outfit over and over again. And then I was like, you know what? Cardcaptor Sakura was onto something, because she had the excuse that her friend would always make her new outfits, and I could just make a gimmick where she has to keep changing her outfit, because I don't want to draw the same outfit multiple times, okay? I'd rather only have to draw it once and then never again. So I'm like trying to figure out ways where in all of my stories the characters get to change their outfits really frequently, because I'm lazy, but lazy in the way where I don't want to reference my own characters like reference pages. I'd rather just make it up as I go on the spot, which is so not good for continuity. Yeah, exactly. Like my two characters that I recently posted are from a project that I've sort of on and off been planning to do, but not in any official capacity. Just like, if this was to be a thing, this would be like a webtoon or a graphic novel or something. And they're set in this kind of like VR MMO premise, very isekai, very much guilty pleasure genre thing. And I was trying to think about like, okay, well, when I play Final Fantasy XIV, I change my clothes like all the time. So maybe, maybe, I could get them to change their clothes all the time, or at least like, have them like glamour it to be different all the time. Maybe that'll be my excuse. Do you have a class in mind, or a type of pose in mind, or a skill in mind? So I tend to draw the hair first because it gives me a sense for like where the top of the scalp is, right? So the top of the head, I can then kind of base every proportion off of the distance from the top of the head down. I don't always get it right, but I just tend to do that because it's harder for me to work outward. So when people start with the face, you start with like the eyes and the nose and everything else, but then you have to guess like what's the distance between the face to the chin, right? I always kind of get it weirdly wrong. It's either like too low, too high, not enough space. So I just started getting like more comfortable starting with the top of the scalp, or at least with the fringe. I start with the bangs, I work up to the top of the scalp, what the distance for that is, and then I work from the bangs to the eyes to the mouth, or to the nose to the mouth, and then to the chin. And then it's a question of how wide is the face gonna be. So that's just kind of how I started getting used to drawing. It makes more sense in my head than drawing the eyes first, but not like I won't start there. It's just that I think I also have a rush to settle all of those problems early on, because I have a pretty bad habit, or not habit, I just am bad at gauging distances. So I always make the length between the eyebrow and the top of the head too tall, or I always end up making the chin not long enough or too long. So it's just like a habit that I started picking up. White mage, holy. I wonder if I can find a video of it. Actually, Tojo, do you mind helping me find a video of that skill specifically? Holy for just cast animation. Oh, sorry, my glasses hit my microphone. Oh, sorry. That was pretty loud. Okay. I could get her mid twirl, maybe. From the front. Okay, cool. Yeah. Could do something like that. Is that a Maya emote? The hummingbird VTuber? Another soft topic, but I remember you mentioning that sewing patterns help understand clothing. Can you talk more about that? Yeah, so I think this kind of, in general, sort of goes into like a bigger conversation about just kind of being aware of how clothes are made is really good for a designer. Knowing how different seam placements affect the look and feel of fabric, how the structure of clothing can change depending on what details you give it. Because depending on how, functional you want your designs to be, placing seams wherever sometimes doesn't work out. Especially if you have super structured garments, like ones that are really stiff or need a lot of, structure in them to keep that kind of sculptural look. Knowing how to make that out of any kind of material, if it's metal, that's easy, but if it's cloth, that's a lot harder and requires a lot more construction. And knowing how to do that, knowing what they're called, knowing different types of seams, era of silhouettes, the difference between, a princess seam, different like bust lines, hem lines, knowing different types of silhouette, different types of dresses, different ways to fold fabric. In general, learning more about how clothes are made helps you design clothes in a way that's a lot more authentic, a lot more true to life, and in general just gives you more options when it comes to adding details to your clothes. Because if you start to understand like all the different ways that seams can be made, what they're for, what the intention is, you can start putting them in ways that are a lot more creative as opposed to functional. You can use them as ways to block up or block out a different an outfit so that each seam kind of introduces a new color, introduces a new graphic line that leads your eye towards places. It's kind of just another tool for you to use in order to make better decisions about your costume. But I think it's important for everyone to sort of learn more about this craft that we are kind of pretending that we know. Like, we design characters with all the assumptions of like we understand how, like, we're taking advantage of the fact that fashion as an industry exists on the side, and you're drawing clothes, we're interpreting them, we're creating costumes for these characters. But then not a lot of people really pay attention to fashion in like a real way. They see it as, they take elements from pre-existing clothes, or they just find like a reference and then put that on their character. But clothes can say so much about a character that it's almost a shame to not understand how clothes can say so much about the designer or the model or the story that fashion designers are trying to tell. Getting into how clothes are constructed, how fashion has aged and how fashion has changed over the years helps us craft better, more authentic stories as far as what the clothes that we make and the costumes that we design for our characters say about them and their world and their history and their backstory. So I recommend, just watching people talk about clothes, being kind of interested in fashion. You don't have to follow them, but I think it's worth checking in on it occasionally. Like, see what types of styles are in that season, and you can watch people talk about it, critique it, people that are much more knowledgeable about fashion, what makes like a really good seasonal piece, what makes it, interesting and unique, because fashion is its own whole form of art. They've got their own stereotypes and cliches, and they've got their own unique like fresh takes on this thing that has spanned decades and decades and centuries worth of history. They've got their masters, they've got their own like developing talented brands, they've got their powerhouses. Like, it's a shame to not draw upon that level of dedication and research to inform our own work, if that makes any sense. How do we go about learning about clothes? I don't know anything. I've gotten to a point where I understand anatomic proportions, but I can never draw clothes. So I'd say if you've gotten to a point where you can draw the human body, but you can't draw clothes, then it's time to transition into doing clothed figure drawing. I don't really know how to describe drawing clothes to you, because functionally it's very similar to drawing a human body. You learn it in a very similar way. You learn how fabric dynamically falls and tenses and uses like a point of tension to fall away from a form. Right? There's I mean, it's kind of similar to the human body, but not necessarily. Fabric has its own physics. It changes depending on the material that you use, the kind of tension and the circumstance that it's being, put into. It depends on the lighting, and it depends on how it's constructed and how it's sewn or cut or you know what. So it's a whole nother thing. I'd say if you just started to become confident in drawing humans, like, you might struggle to accurately describe fabric, but that is all stuff that you can learn as you learn more about how physics and dynamic cloth works. Observation is your best friend whenever you start learning something. Drawing things from observation helps, because if you have no other frame of reference, reality should be your frame of reference. I think you mentioned once that you took classes in college that helped you understand clothing better in order to apply those techniques into your character design process. Of classes you take. I actually don't know what classes I was talking about. If it was about college, I took a fashion class in high school that was taught by someone who eventually went to art center to teach fashion, and that was a really great class. Like, just getting fashion history taught to you, or even learning about fashion history, helps you so much when it comes to designing costumes for characters. I wouldn't say any class in college necessarily helped me as much, because I never actually got to the costume class that my college had, and there wasn't really any emphasis on costume design or anything like that outside of that class. So I probably was talking about the one in high school. Costume figure drawing is great because those people often wear a variety of different fabrics, so be very aware of what kind of fabrics you're drawing. You don't need to know their names. I think it's good to learn them at some point, but you don't need to know them. Just start understanding how fabric is affected by the human body, right? It's when, fabric is, when it's super sheer or super thin, the weave kind of allows it to feel a little bit more like water. Every little thing affects it in some drastic way, versus thicker fabrics like wool. They aren't as affected by minute changes underneath them. And so if someone's wearing like a wool coat, or they're wearing felt or something like that, it isn't as affected by what's underneath it so much as it's affected by how it's manipulated, like sewn or stitched or folded and all that kind of stuff. So those fabrics, a lot more structural, a lot thicker, they tend to tell you more about how the costume is constructed, versus sheer fabrics or thin fabrics telling you more about how the fabric lays on the person. When you're doing costume figure drawing or costumes in general, just watching people, when you're, out and about, when you see, someone in your family walking around, like, look at how, like, I assume most people are wearing, like, some form of polyester or cotton. That's a pretty medium place to start with everything. I'd say watch people walk around and move, and when they raise their arms up, what happens to the fabric? Look at yourself in the mirror. Sometimes, like, I'll just sort of look to see, like, oh, if I move my arm up, what happens to my sleeve? What happens to my collar? How does this fabric bunch up? How does it stretch? What happens underneath the arm size? So, the seam around the arm, what happens to the fabric underneath, depending on how short, how long, how big, how fitted the fabric is. If you raise your arms, does the shirt come up? Is it too long to come up? If you belt it, what happens? If it's like poofed over with a little pouch at the top of the belt versus if it's like flat against your body, how does that look like? Different fabrics, different types of, stuffed, quilted, all that kind of stuff. Like, those affect what fabric looks like when it's made into clothing. And it's a lot to learn, but those are the things that really make you stand out as a designer, is when you can communicate all those things in a way that is not only faithful and authentic to the research, but it also is, new or inventive or creatively done to serve whatever the character or the story or the world needs. That's the thing you have to juggle, is that ultimately all this research has to go into designing something that people aren't used to seeing, or designing something new or an inventive take on a classic premise. And that's why design is difficult, because designing costumes requires you to know how to do all these things on a technical level, so you don't have to worry about struggling to define it in that way when you're trying to do something a lot more abstract, like designing and putting all these pieces together in a way that doesn't already exist in that same state. So costume figure drawing, I think, is a really good way to start. Anything from observation is a good way to start, because if you don't know how to draw something, reality is the only consistent way to learn. Sometimes it's a lot easier to find that kind of reference in books, so looking at fashion catalogs, fashion magazines, old bookstores, secondhand bookstores sometimes have history of fashion books from certain regions. Those tend to be a lot more potentially accurate than things that you might find online. Plus, you don't really know necessarily if the fashion course you're taking is going to necessarily cover things outside of, you know, very classic European fashions, because that dominated a lot of the kind of fashion trends that sort of then translated into modern high fashion. Did I get good sleep? I'd say so. I went to bed around 5, slept until 12. So, I'd say so. This is the lo-fi hip-hop music by Lo-Fi Girl on Spotify. So if you look up, she's the girl that does the homework thing, they have a Spotify playlist version. It's nice to hear someone drawing along. I used to do that a lot when I was a kid. I'd always draw along with people on streams. It's a nice vibe. Lou! Can you tell him I said hi? I love Lou. Oh my god, I was wondering if Lou still worked there. Oh, I love Lou. I don't know how to describe to you how much I love that man. Please tell him I said hi. Oh, my heart. I forgot how much I really want to like go see him, but I don't really want to intrude on his class. But yeah, you're in such good hands. I love Lou. Lou Police is such a fantastic artist and a great teacher, great mentor. We moved to Tennessee? Wow. You know what? Doesn't his family live in Tennessee? You know what? I'm not surprised. I think the air's probably better for him out there. Aw, I'm happy for him. Lou speaks pretty abstractly. I'd say if you're looking for like super technical step-by-step stuff, he's not gonna really give that to you. He deals a lot in like kind of feeling like kind of sort of more gut instincts, so some people have issues with him when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'd say he's got such a wealth of experience that you kind of can't see it as a bad thing, like the way that he talks about things in a more abstract way, because what he's trying to convey is more than just, here's how you draw X. He's trying to push you to convey a lot more when it comes to really living through your designs. He really encourages people to, at least from what I remember, he really encourages people to have fun with what they're working on, because he'll be able to tell if what you're doing is something that you're really interested in. He really likes spaghetti westerns, so if you do a spaghetti western project, he'll love you for it. But also, you know, it's a little harder because he's not there physically, but like try to engage with him about your art outside of class. Like he really wants to see students like really want to work or really want to like make art seriously, and it's hard to tell that when you're just students and you're kind of just like trying to get homework done. But he really responds to you if you show him that you care about making art, about your designs, about your work, about your progress, and if you know, show him that, he responds in kind. I remember that, you know, when I was at school, one of the first day that I had Lou, I remember sitting in his class and being like, I have to pick this guy's brains. Like, I have to do really well in this class, because Lou's impression on me was that this was a guy who really knew what he was talking about. He just might not be the kind of person that will be able to communicate with someone on a super sort of more like intermediate level. He wants to push people because he knows that there's something much more beyond just like game art. He wants to push people to be real artists, which is why he'll show you fashion illustrators and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's hard for people to really appreciate that, because to them it's hard to like be on that level with him, which is totally understandable. I would just say try to make your effort to see his assignments as his assignments are less like, here's a school thing. Like, try to look at his assignments like, here's an opportunity for me to take a premise, to take an assignment and really run with it. Really make it something that I'm happy with, that I'm excited to work on. You know, imbue it with some of your own interests, with some of your own, like, you know, styles or thoughts, and he'll recognize that. Because a lot of students will turn in homework and they just kind of don't care. He knows when you care, and he responds to that really well. And I think in general that's a lot of the issues with how people treat homework at school. It's like, yeah, it's homework, and sometimes you kind of just want to get it done, but sometimes it's kind of worth doing more because you can, because you're in a position to really push those assignments to also be, you know, something you're interested in drawing, something that you enjoy drawing. It doesn't have to be like a project just to fit the project. He's okay if you kind of bend the rules a little bit because you want to, because you're passionate about it. I asked him if I could have all of my assignments for his class match another assignment, or match some other assignments for other classes, because I wanted all of my classes that year to culminate into one portfolio project, and he was totally fine with that. Build rapport with him and he'll totally support you, whatever you want to be doing in his class. He's a really good soul, and he's a really good guy to learn from, because he's got such a breadth of experience that transcends just games, and that is such a valuable thing when you have a teacher that isn't just a game artist, but he's more than that. He's like an actual artist who's worked in editorials, he's worked in fashion, he's worked in animation, and then, you know, he might not necessarily have super strong experience working in games, but he knows what appeal looks like. He knows what good characters look like, and he recognizes that. He's also kind of an old hat, so like sometimes he'll say things where it's like it's a little disparaging for some people. Like, I remember last my last class with him, a lot of kids really liked Nomura, the Kingdom Hearts guy, and he really didn't like any of Nomura's stuff, which felt really bad for the kids that actually do like Nomura. I don't like Nomura's art, but that's also just me. That's a me thing, right? So, you know, he's not like the craziest progressive person, but at the same time, he was super into the Final Fantasy Black Mage art for Final Fantasy XIV. So it's not like he's anti, you know, other styles of art. You just kind of need to show him something that's cool and interesting to him, that appeals to his, like, thing. So that's like a whole big spiel. But ultimately it just comes down to, like, show him that you care, try to live through your homework a little bit. He's a great guy to learn from, but a lot of people squander that opportunity because he's not like a classic teacher who gives them like super basic homework and super basic steps. Try to achieve more with him, because if you show him that you want to put in the time, he'll give you some really valuable advice. And he's one of the best teachers I ever had at that school. So the fact that he's still working there is a great boon. Because I was worried he would have left with a lot of the other teachers that left at the same time. How long does an illustration take you? Depends on the illustration. Sometimes it takes me, like, you know, anywhere from 6 to 20 hours, or even as much as, like, 2 weeks. So it really depends. Oh my gosh, I feel like I only did one live on Instagram. But welcome. I am feeling better, thank you. This is 11 by 17. I typically draw on 30 inches by 30 inches though at 300 DPI. Mainly because I just started getting used to it after working that big. But for these, I work at 11 by 17. I think if you do commands, like exclamation point commands. Just one, normally, once I find one that I like. I mean, I have a lot of brushes, but I tend to only use one per drawing. Do you use the colorist extension? I'm trying to remember which Twist artist I discovered that from. I used to. It used to be my biggest thing until Photoshop added their own color wheel. And then I switched from like Photoshop CS something, whatever the last CS was, 2019. And then I switched into Creative Cloud. For coloring, rendering, do you usually use a soft or a hard edge? I can't figure out which one to use. Both, ideally. Use a soft edge for form shadows or form changes, so like a smooth surface, and then a hard edge you use for cast shadows, contact shadows, anything that's like super close to something, or anything that has like a shadow casting on it from another object. Have I seen Aliens yet? I have not seen Aliens. I've seen Alien, but not the second one. Have I seen Arcane? Yes, I have. The show by the French studio Fortiche. Yes, I will absolutely let you all know when I see it. My partner has never let me live it down that I watched Alien without him, even though he's been wanting to watch Alien with me for the longest time since we started dating. So I promised him that I would watch Aliens with him. The recent post you did on Instagram, did you only use a default hard round brush to color it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. Let's see. Just checking. This is the resized version, but yeah, I mean, other than like a couple of airbrushing. This was like a screen tone brush that I have. All of this was hard round. So. Of course. Because I love the show Arcane, made by the excellent Studio Fortiche, the French animation entertainment media Studio Fortiche, made a beautiful show that I think was such a good example of their creative direction. And I am, I'm just so happy that they finally got to showcase their incredible, amazing skills that they've always had in a beautiful, lovely show called Arcane, made by them, by Fortiche. If no one gets the joke, if you haven't been here for a while, I am particularly annoyed by people who watch Arcane and credit League, or specifically credit just Riot for Arcane. I am such a big Fortiche fan. I've loved all of their work that they've ever done for Riot and other companies. It really boils my blood that people don't talk about Fortiche at all, despite them being a completely separate entity in an exclusive contract with Riot. But so it's just like they don't get credited for a lot of their work that they've done for Riot so far, and so not a lot of people know that they made some of Riot's coolest championship, whatever they're called, esports videos. So whenever Arcane comes up, I'm like, oh, the show that it was made by Fortiche, because did Riot play a part in the making of it, or is it generally just Fortiche? That is kind of unknown information. Fortiche did the bulk of the creative direction, because all of the style itself is very much Fortiche, like their home studio style. So their creative direction, the general adaptation of all of the characters are very much faithful to, I think, Fortiche's own creative directors. I think the part that I would say is the most contentious is the writing. I'm not sure who specifically was in charge of writing the show. I think potentially they let Fortiche make the bulk of the creative decisions, and then just sort of tried to wrap some of the writing that led into the lore, because I know that they were writing the show almost a decade ago. They started writing the show a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure that was Riot writers that originally did that. So they were setting the stage for a lot of lore stuff. I don't know who did the final draft of the writing, but the visual style is very much Fortiche. I know Fortiche also worked with a lot of outsourcer studios, and I've heard talk of Fortiche having worked with other companies as well, or other companies having been involved in the pre-production of Arcane, including companies like Blizzard, just based on some of the artists that released art post the show coming out. So it's a mix of both. A show that big could not have been made predominantly by an outside external studio. Riot definitely did have a hand in it, but it was very much produced in the style of Fortiche, and therefore I will champion Fortiche wherever, whenever, all the time. Sure. I'm feeling alright. Do you stick with the line art you've made up until now in the coloring process, or do you somehow change or tweak it a little bit? I try not to stay too faithful to line art. I always ultimately end up wanting to change something, so I try to be okay with doing that. It usually means that I don't really end up with the most cleanest process or the cleanest results, but I always end up wanting to change something that was difficult for me to notice when I was line arting or lining the sketch, or lining, just drawing. For some reason, color always makes it look different than what I thought it was gonna look like. And it always ends up making me want to fix a bunch of stuff. So it was not my intention, but ultimately it does end up changing quite a bit after line arting. Shiva's staff. I'm going to have to turn it this way. Oops. No. I'll just, I was like, oh no, it's fine. But then I'm like looking at him like, oh, staff is really complicated. Okay, cool. Thank you. Cause that Shiva Diamond Cade is a lot. It's a really nice weapon, though. It made me wanna be a white mage, and then I actually had to, like, learn how to heal, and I was like, absolutely not. I've gotten permission. I'm gonna do magic crystals. The kids will be fine with it. I mean, it's a good challenge. It always is. But it would have taken quite a bit of time. Oh, so close to their first year. It's always crazy hearing about people becoming parents for the first time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's like something people do. I'm like the youngest in my family, so I've never had to like grow up taking care of other kids or being around other kids, and so it's always very surprising to me. I'm like, oh yeah, right. Some people like have kids. Very Sailor Moon-esque. I think the cape is throwing me off a little bit. May. And thank you for the bits. Did I not save? No, I did. Okay. Let's do... Of course. Let's do one more and then I will probably call it here for tonight. Shift up. Okay. Remind me that this person wanted a transparent version of this saved out instead of a JPEG. Past few months, my handwriting has improved a lot. That's good. Have you been writing a lot? And thank you, Artifa. Hey, Teal! Haven't seen you around in a while. How you been? And yes, happy 22. Almost a year. It'll be a really lovely milestone. I recently started using a Cintiq, and I'm no stranger to wrist problems, and I can definitely see why people would have them using a Cintiq. I try to rest my wrist a lot when I'm drawing on a Cintiq, so I think I've, in a way, managed to sort of avoid a lot of more daily pain. But I think it's kind of hard to avoid it given the fact that drawing on a Cintiq does require a very specific pose and specific way of drawing. So I'd say other than like taking breaks and stretching, there's not really much else that you can do. I'd say if you're experiencing a lot of pain, it might be a good idea to transition out of using a Cintiq. Using like just a normal what is it? Just a normal tablet where your neck is straight, you can look right at your monitor, and what really matters is like where you put your tablet, which I always recommend putting it on your lap or something so that your wrist is straight. You're looking straight ahead at your computer monitor, so if that's like at normal head height depending on where your chair's height is at, and then you get a chair that you can kind of sit back in. Like that's kind of the most, I think, ergonomic way to draw, other than making sure your Cintiq is high enough so that your wrist is straight, your head is straight, all that kind of stuff. Usually in order to ensure that, people get like Cintiq arms. I haven't really tried a Cintiq arm yet because my table can't really support an arm. You know, there are ways to mitigate it, but I'd say it's kind of not possible to solve. Have you ever got elbow pain? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Teal. I did get the feeling that you were probably going through a rough time. But, you know, always happy to see you whenever you feel like coming back and saying hi. There's always a space for you here. And I, for one, am always very, very happy to see you. Like, I put it flat on my legs. Sometimes, depending on how tall your chair is, I'll sometimes lean it against the chair, or not the chair, the table. But that's only if your tablet's like really big, right? I do that with my Cintiq because I need it to be tilted towards me. But when I had my just like normal Wacom, like no screen tablet, it would just be flat on my lap. My name is that because when I was a kid in middle school, I wanted to have a name that was mine. So on DeviantArt, at the time, I really liked a song called Araceli, and so I took that name and I typoed it until it was something that I could get on DeviantArt, and then I ended up with Araceli, and Araceli's been stuck on to me ever since then, and a lot of people pronounce it as Araceli, which I don't blame them for, because at what point what other point does Celli really appear? But to me, it's always been Araceli. So yeah, so that's just how my name is at this point. It's always interesting because I always am curious where I've met certain people, and depending on what name they use for me, whether or not it's like Aru or Knight or something else, I'll know where they met me because it's like different eras of my life. But yes, that's where that name comes from, and that's I tried to brand all of my things the same way, so that's why all of my social medias are the same name. I like how the option is there, but no one makes me do it. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. I'll get up. I will stretch, and I'll give Peach a kiss. Give me a second.
Peach. Hi. Look at this cute tongue. Look at this cute tongue. Your tummy is rumbly.
Are you making chemical warfare in there, Peach? Because your poops have been real stinky today.
Hi. Hi. Hi, Peach. Hi, Peach. Such a cute cat. You're such a cute cat.
Peach is good. Peach is really good. Well, so it turns out and I think I mentioned this to previous stream, but she got a really light version of like the feline herpes thing, which is kind of just like there in the environment. So it particularly affects cats that don't have a really high immune system. And she's okay. She's not really having too bad, like, symptom-wise. She's got, like, runny eyes and a little bit of a cough, but her cough kind of came and went really fast, so even that didn't stick around for very long. So she's been on medication, which she hates me for. But she's been pretty fine ever since I took her to the vet, so safe to say that I think she's well on the road to recovery. She did gain 2 pounds though, because I was trying to feed her wet food from her previous debacle, which was eating chicken bones. So she ate chicken bones. I was feeding her wet food because I wanted her to eat and digest and poop regularly. And then she somehow got herself the herpes virus, whatever, forget what it was called, feline herpes. And here we are now, where she has to get her eye drops, and general immune stimulants. So when I had a normal non-screen tablet, I'd normally sit crisscross applesauce versus sitting down, but like, you know, this was kind of the gist, and then my monitor was like here. Right. With my Cintiq, it's not optimal, but it's okay. I try to draw like this. And I try to keep my back up against my my chair at all times. Oftentimes my neck will probably be curved down though. But yeah, so this is how I draw with my Cintiq. Ooh, that N is rough. This is how I draw with my, if that makes sense. Do you think of the pose before you start drawing, or just go with the flow? Typically, I just go with the flow. Sometimes I'll say, you know, maybe it'd be nice to do like a sitting down pose this time, or maybe it'd be nice to do one where like the person, if it's a couple pose, maybe I'll think about, oh, maybe the person is like against their shoulders, maybe they're sitting on each other, you know, that kind of a thing. But if it's just like one character, I'll typically just go with whatever. I'll go with the flow. Like, this guy doesn't have any ideas right now. I'm kind of just making it up, and that's just sometimes how it goes. Thank you. Oh, this is a totally different stream, unless you were here earlier, but yeah. Second stream today. Do I have any tips on drawing front-facing faces? Symmetry sucks. I suck at symmetry. There's no way for me to draw the same face on both sides. So if you struggle with it, just fucking use the symmetry tool. But other than that, though, like, it's good to keep facial proportions in mind. Like, oh, the distance between the eyes versus the distance between the eye to, like, the base of the nose and that kind of stuff. If you know facial proportions, it's kind of just, from there, you're just kind of trying to make sure it looks good from every angle, that you have a sense for depth, that you're not flattening out certain places on the face that needs to protrude or needs a little bit more depth to convey properly. But my biggest problem with drawing faces facing front is that I can never draw them right. I always need to flip it all the time and move it around, so I don't know. Bye, Esura! Thank you for coming. Oh, yeah. Yeah, these go for about anywhere from 3 to 4 hours. So if you ever join later on in the future, that's generally how long they go for. Although I have gone for longer. Is the brush you're currently using for this piece up for purchase somewhere? So these are, I think, free with Photoshop. They're Kyle's Ultimate Charcoal Pencils. Kyle was a brush maker back in like the not early 2000s, but like mid 2000s. Who eventually his brushes were so popular that Adobe just kind of had him make brushes for Photoshop by default. So this should come with Photoshop if you own it. Talking about a 4K monitor, do you use a 4K monitor? If so, is it weird for you to first use the Intuos on it? I have an Intuos Premium and feel like the monitor is too big for a tiny Intuos. I don't remember if it was that weird. You should toggle on forced proportions in your, Wacom settings, or Wacom settings, if that's something that feels like super weird to you. But like, I don't remember it being too big of a shift. It was definitely more of like a visual shift versus like the feeling of drawing on it, I guess. Hey, Yuki. I wanted the tail to be up. Peach. Hold on. They do? Well, I will keep mispronouncing it until the day I die.
Peach, I'll let you out.
I think so. I think that's how a lot of people typically pronounce it. I'm glad to hear it. Drawing's fun, but sometimes you just need to take a break from it to really learn to love it again. Oh. Is it? Oh, they wanted this to be transparent. What was their name? And then I save this as PNG. I forget how to turn off the thing that forces Photoshop to save it as a copy. Or like put copy in the name when you save it that way. It's very strange. Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, well, I think that'll be it for me today because, it's about 11. It's about an hour past when I would normally stop, but it's alright. So, yeah. I'll stop here for tonight. I'm gonna see if I can stream sometime next week because I'm still on break next week. If I don't, I'll definitely stream on Friday again. But thank you everyone so much for coming out and hanging out with me. I did get the tail. Do I like the design of Windows 11? I haven't transferred over to Windows 11, so I don't know, but I've heard it's pretty buggy. But yeah, thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for keeping me company and being so kind. I will stream again next Friday and maybe potentially more next week, but who knows. But until then, stay safe, stay healthy. I love you all so very much. And I'll see you all next time.